In the summer of 1381, one of the greatest military powers in history appeared off the coast of Japan. Thousands of ships carried a vast coalition army of Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers across the sea. Their ruler was Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan and emperor of the Yuan Dynasty. The Mongol Empire had conquered kingdoms across Asia, broken powerful armies, and created the largest connected land empire the world had ever seen. Now Kublai Khan wanted Japan. Traditional chronicles describe more than 4,000 ships and as many as 140,000 soldiers and sailors. Modern historians debate those numbers, and the real force may have been smaller. But there is no doubt that the Second Mongol Invasion of Japan was one of the largest amphibious campaigns of the medieval world. Waiting on the shores of Kyushu were the warriors of the Kamakura Shogunate. The Japanese had fewer ships, fewer soldiers, and no great continental empire behind them. But they had spent 7 years preparing for this exact moment. The battle that followed was more than a simple clash between samurai and Mongols. It was a struggle between a powerful land empire and an island nation fighting for survival. It involved coastal fortifications, night raids, massed archery, gunpowder bombs, desperate hand-to-hand combat, and one of the most famous storms in history. The Japanese would later call that storm the Kamikaze, the divine wind, but the popular legend leaves out an important part of the story. The storm did not defeat an army that had already conquered Japan. Before the wind arrived, Japanese resistance had prevented the invaders from establishing a secure position on land. This is the story of the Mongol Invasion of Japan in 1381, and how samurai resistance, defensive engineering, failed coordination, maritime logistics, and the Kamikaze stopped Kublai Khan. By the middle of the 13th century, Kublai Khan had become one of the most powerful rulers on earth. He controlled northern China and established the Yuan Dynasty. After years of war, the Korean kingdom of Goryeo had also been forced to accept Mongol authority. Across the sea lay Japan. It was divided into provinces and warrior domains, but military power was concentrated in the Kamakura Shogunate. The emperor remained an important religious and political figure, yet the shogunate and its regions controlled the armed forces. Kublai Khan did not begin with an invasion. He first sent diplomatic missions. His representatives demanded that Japan recognize the Yuan court and enter formal relations with the Mongol Empire. The letters were polite in appearance, but the warning was clear. Nations that accepted Mongol authority could survive. Nations that refused might be attacked. The Japanese government refused to give Kublai the answer he wanted. Some envoys were ignored and later missions were treated more harshly. The shogunate understood that accepting the Yuan demand could eventually mean submission. Kublai Khan decided that Japan would have to be forced. The first Mongol invasion of Japan began in 1274. A combined Yuan and Korean fleet crossed the sea and attacked Tsushima and Iki, the islands lying between Korea and Kyushu. Local Japanese defenders resisted, but they were overwhelmed. The invaders then landed near Hakata Bay in northern Kyushu. There, the samurai encountered an enemy that fought in a very different way. Japanese warriors traditionally valued mounted archery, personal reputation, individual challenges, and close combat. The Mongol-led army fought as a coordinated formation. Soldiers advanced behind shields. Archers fired in massed volleys. Drums and signals allowed commanders to control units across the battlefield. The invaders also used gunpowder weapons. Explosive projectiles, often called thunder crash bombs, produced smoke, noise, fragments, and panic. Their battlefield use shocked many Japanese warriors. The invasion of 1274 failed to conquer Japan. After fighting around Hakata Bay, the invading force withdrew to its ships. Bad weather may have damaged part of the fleet, although historians continue to debate exactly how important the storm was during the first invasion. Japan had survived, but the Kamakura Shogunate knew Kublai Khan would probably return. The Japanese began preparing the coast of Kyushu. Warriors from different provinces were ordered to guard the shoreline. Commanders studied the landing areas used in 1274 and looked for ways to prevent the Mongols from repeating their success. The most important defensive project was the Genko Borui, a long stone wall constructed along vulnerable parts of Hakata Bay. In many places, its seaward face was steep and difficult to climb. Japanese defenders could move behind the wall, fire arrows from protected positions, and concentrate against enemy landing parties. The purpose of the wall was simple. During the first invasion, Mongol troops had landed, organized, and moved inland. During the Second Mongol Invasion of Japan, the wall would trap them between the sea and prepared samurai positions. The Japanese also developed aggressive naval tactics. They prepared small, fast boats capable of moving among the larger Yuan ships. Rather than challenging the whole Mongol fleet in a single naval battle, samurai could attack isolated vessels, board them, kill soldiers and officers, damage equipment, and withdraw into the darkness. For years, the coast remained under watch. Defenses had to be maintained, soldiers fed, and commanders prepared. Then, in 1281, the warning finally came. Kublai Khan was sending a second and much larger invasion force. The campaign was known in Japan as the Koan Campaign. The Yuan plan involved two separate armies. The Eastern Route Army sailed from Korea. Traditional records describe about 900 ships carrying Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers, along with sailors and support personnel. The Southern Route Army sailed from recently conquered southern China. It was much larger and included many Chinese soldiers and sailors from territories that had once belonged to the Southern Song Dynasty. The exact numbers remain uncertain. Medieval chronicles often exaggerated army sizes. Even so, assembling the two fleets required an enormous effort. Ships had to be built or collected. Soldiers needed food, fresh water, weapons, horses, and equipment. Crews from different languages and military traditions had to cooperate under one command. The two armies were supposed to meet and strike Japan together. But coordinating huge fleets across long distances was extremely difficult. The Eastern Route Army arrived first. Once again, Tsushima and Iki became the first targets. The defenders knew what had happened 7 years earlier, but the islands could not stop such a powerful force. After fierce resistance, both were overrun. Their sacrifice gave the Japanese mainland something valuable: time. Warnings reached Hakata. Samurai gathered behind the defensive wall. Archers prepared their positions. Small attack boats waited in sheltered water. The defenders watched the horizon for the Mongol fleet. When the ships appeared in Hakata Bay, the invaders found a very different coastline from the one they had attacked in 1274. The stone wall blocked the easiest landing areas. Boats could carry troops toward the beach, but soldiers who reached the shore faced a steep barrier defended by archers and infantry. Japanese warriors attacked any groups that became separated from the main force. The Mongol-led army struggled to create a secure bridgehead. The Genko Borui did not make every landing impossible, but it prevented the rapid advance that had occurred during the first invasion. Unable to establish a safe position on land, much of the Mongol invasion force remained aboard its ships. That created a dangerous situation. Thousands of soldiers and sailors were crowded on vessels near an enemy coast. They depended on supplies carried across the sea. Fresh water was limited. Disease could spread quickly. Horses, weapons, food, and men competed for space. At night, the samurai began attacking. Small Japanese boats moved into Hakata Bay under darkness. Warriors approached the larger Yuan ships, fired arrows, climbed onto decks, and fought at close range. Some boarding parties targeted officers. Others damaged equipment or set fires before withdrawing. The Japanese could not destroy the entire fleet in this way, but that was not necessary. Their goal was to keep the invaders under pressure and prevent them from resting or organizing a major landing. The Mongol ships were forced to anchor farther from shore and strengthen their defenses. The invasion continued, but Kublai Khan's soldiers were being denied what they needed most: a secure base on Japanese land. The Mongol-led forces relied on coordinated formations, shields, massed archery, and gunpowder weapons. The Japanese increasingly fought in organized groups rather than depending only on individual combat. The stone wall controlled where the enemy could land. Archers attacked from prepared positions. Small boats allowed Japanese warriors to raid the fleet without fighting every ship at once. The illustrated scrolls of the Mongol invasions preserve scenes of mounted samurai, ships, armor, bows, and explosive weapons. They also reveal something the Kamikaze legend sometimes hides. Japanese warriors had already been fighting hard before the storm arrived. Meanwhile, the much larger Southern Route Army was still crossing from China. Delays prevented the two Mongol fleets from combining as quickly as planned. When the southern force finally reached Japanese waters, thousands of ships gathered around the western coast of Kyushu, especially near Takashima and Imari Bay. The invaders still possessed enormous strength. A successful combined landing might have overwhelmed parts of the Japanese defense, but time was working against them. Many soldiers had been living aboard crowded ships for weeks. Food and water had to be rationed. illness could spread. The fleet included different types of ships from China and Korea, and some vessels may have been prepared in great haste. The fleet included many different ship designs, and some vessels may have been prepared in great haste. Yet even well-built medieval ships were vulnerable when crowded near a dangerous coast during typhoon season. In mid-August 1281, the weather began to change. The wind became stronger, the sea rose around the anchored ships. Then a massive typhoon struck the coast of Kyushu. For 2 days, violent winds and waves smashed into the Mongol fleet. Ships collided, anchors failed, vessels were driven against rocks, beaches, and one another. Some broke apart, others sank with soldiers, sailors, weapons, and supplies still aboard. Men who had survived weeks of fighting were thrown into the sea. The invasion fleet had become trapped between the storm and the Japanese coast. No reliable casualty total exists. Historical accounts describe catastrophic losses, but the exact number of dead will never be known. What is clear is that a large part of Kublai Khan's fleet was destroyed or disabled. To the Japanese, the disaster appeared to be divine intervention. Religious institutions had prayed for the protection of the country. When the invaders were shattered by the storm, many believed the gods had answered. The storm became known as the Kamikaze, the divine wind. When the typhoon finally passed, wreckage covered the coast. Survivors were scattered across beaches and islands. Many had lost their officers, weapons, supplies, and ships. Japanese warriors moved against them. Some groups of invaders tried to defend themselves. Others attempted to escape aboard the remaining vessels. Many were killed or captured. Only part of the invasion force returned to China and Korea. The Mongol invasion of Japan in 1281 had failed. Kublai Khan considered launching another expedition, and Japan continued preparing for a third invasion. But the enormous cost, the difficulty of rebuilding the fleet, and other military problems across the Yuan Empire prevented another serious attempt. Japan had survived, but victory came at a price. The Kamakura Shogunate had spent years mobilizing warriors and building defenses, while many samurai received little compensation because no new territory had been conquered. This resentment contributed to the shogunate's long-term weakness. The Mongol invasion also revealed the limits of continental power. The Yuan Dynasty possessed soldiers, weapons, engineers, ships, and the resources of a vast empire. But moving that power across the sea was a different challenge. The second Mongol invasion of Japan failed for several connected reasons. First, the Japanese had learned from the campaign of 1274. The Genko Borui prevented easy landings at Hakata Bay. Second, samurai resistance kept much of the invading army aboard its ships. Coastal defenses, archery, and night raids denied the Mongols a secure base. Third, the two Yuan fleets failed to arrive and attack together as efficiently as planned. The Eastern Route Army reached Japan before the Southern Route Army, allowing the defenders to concentrate their strength. Fourth, the invasion depended on a complicated command and supply system connecting Mongolia, China, Korea, and the sea routes to Japan. Finally, the fleet remained in Japanese waters during typhoon season. When the Kamikaze arrived, thousands of soldiers were still aboard crowded ships near a hostile coast. The divine wind was devastating, but it was the final blow, not the entire explanation. The storm did not rescue Japan from an enemy that had already conquered the country. It struck an invasion force that had been delayed, contained, exhausted, and forced to remain at sea by Japanese resistance. The victory belonged to both the defenders and the storm. The Mongol invasions became some of the most important events in Japanese history. Sections of the Genko Borui still survive around Fukuoka. Archaeological discoveries beneath the sea continue to reveal objects from Kublai Khan's lost fleet. The most powerful legacy, however, was the story of the Kamikaze. For centuries, the divine wind was remembered as proof that Japan had been protected from foreign conquest. During the Second World War, the word kamikaze was used again for Japanese pilots who carried out suicide attacks against Allied ships. The meaning had changed, but the historical reference remained the same: a final force defending Japan from invasion. The true story of the Mongol invasion of Japan in 1281 is more complicated than the legend. It was not simply a miracle storm destroying a helpless fleet. It was the result of defensive preparation, samurai resistance, stone fortifications, failed coordination, logistical pressure, maritime vulnerability, and extreme weather. Kublai Khan sent one of the greatest invasion forces of the medieval world toward Japan. The Yuan Dynasty possessed ships, soldiers, gunpowder weapons, and the resources of a vast empire. But the Mongols could not break through the defenses of Hakata Bay. They could not secure the coast, they could not force the samurai to surrender. And when the Kamikaze finally arrived, it destroyed an invasion already trapped between the sea and an enemy that refused to yield. The Mongol fleet disappeared beneath the waves. The samurai remained on the shores of Kyushu, and the Mongol invasion of Japan in 1281 became one of history's most famous failed conquests.